And in the meantime, the first ever standalone summit between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan is expected to define their trilateral security cooperation even more clearly now, especially on the issues here on the Korean Peninsula. Let's discuss it with Mr. Mark Barry this morning. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Yes, good morning, Dami.
Talks on North Korea will be among the top agenda items, no surprise there. But how significant will the topic of North Korea be in the discussions this time?
Well, it's a huge part of it, but it's certainly not the only part of it. And certainly we're not going to find the name China overtly discussed, but that is certainly part of the background. What I would suggest is that this summit is to make up for the disunity which cannot be tolerated that we saw in 2017, 2018 between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S., and particularly where the previous president kind of looked on and didn't really do anything about it. I think President Biden is trying to make up for that error, and he's trying to strengthen the participation of these two allies who are both treaty allies of the United States. And so it's something that's necessary at this time. However, it's not going to be a be-all solution. It's an important step forward, but it's not going to lead in and of itself to a breakthrough of peace or of major diplomacy. But it's a step, unfortunately, which has to be taken at this time.
Indeed. Now, the beefed-up security cooperation is likely to be inked in a joint statement on North Korea. That's highly likely. That's upcoming. Now, what details do you think will be included this time? I mean, will there be more emphasis on the trilateral cooperation against missile launches? What do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, they want to regularize this trilateral summit to happen annually. The national security advisors of each country hopefully would gather twice a year. The meetings among defense chiefs and chiefs of the joint staffs of each country to meet even more regularly. And this is something that sends its own message. But more importantly, should be tighter defense cooperation, the ability to be able to have an easier time of transmitting intelligence information about missile launches and all sorts of other technical data that oftentimes has to go through the U.S. and then to the other ally. And I think this is something that President Biden wants to put a stop to. So this is all for the best. The joint statement, however, will cover other areas of economic security. It will imply a lot of other areas. So North Korea won't be the only topic, but it's probably the paramount topic.
Definitely. Now, the thing is, things are expected to be rocky again here on the Korean Peninsula in the month of August, right? With the trilateral summits coming up and also the South Korea-U.S. Ulji Freedom Shield exercise, which is annual. Now, how will the trilateral summit, do you think, change the situation here on the Korean Peninsula in the month of August?
Well, I think this is why we see certain things happening. I think that there are two things that Kim Jong-un always has a problem with, and one is military exercises. In fact, I would distinguish that from the presence of U.S. troops, because he was quite clear to Mike Pompeo, according to Pompeo's memoirs, that he didn't necessarily have a problem with U.S. troops. What he has a problem with is the exercises which his military can only construe, and in fact, correctly, are directed against Kim and North Korea. So you have that problem, but on top of that, North Korea can only survive in the climate in Northeast Asia and in East Asia overall by giving the appearance of leaning on China and Russia and playing one off of the other, even though none of them are terribly reliable allies, and they use each other all for their own purposes. But at least publicly, given the fact that this trilateral summit is happening at Camp David, Kim has to do these kinds of actions in order to continue the appearances that he's been giving to the world. But that belies, I think, completely different realities under the surface for North Korea, for China, and for Russia.
Mark, before we let you go, let's talk about things happening on up in the north, right? The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly had another round of inspections at weapons factories over the weekend after he did so earlier this week, right? Now, what's the motive behind the visit this time?
Well, it's a continuation of visits made earlier in August, and look, it's cost-free. You bring a photographer, and then you post it on the internet. These visits probably would have been made anyway, but a big deal is being made of them. And all the Pyongyangologists are trying to figure out who's who in the pecking order and what facility is this and so forth and so on. But basically, it's something he has to do in the lead up to the Ulchi Freedom Guardian exercises, and particularly at this time of the summit. But unfortunately, there does not seem to be any arena of a breakthrough in this third year of the Biden administration. And this is a tragedy because the climate in 2018 was different, but nobody handled it in the proper way. And it's very unfortunate that things are back to this point. But I have to say that President Biden is doing the best that he can under the conditions. And I should finally note that these are very stressful conditions for him domestically, and more domestic news may rattle the world coming out of Georgia even later this week on the same day that the Trilateral Summit takes place at Camp David.
Sure, let's see what details come out of the Trilateral this time at Camp David. Thanks so much for joining us all the way from New York this morning. You have a good night.
Yes, thank you very much.